keep hearing this idea online lately that, especially the younger generation, that goth is not necessarily about the music anymore, but more about just aesthetic. And every time I hear that, my brain sort of short circuits, because I honestly can't imagine goth without the music involved. And I want to be really clear up front that this is not about attacking younger people or saying that anyone is fake or anyone is more gother than anyone else. This is me trying to understand when a real cultural shift happened, because I lived on the other side of it. And I think that as elders, it's our place to reach out and try to understand where a different generation comes from. For my generation, goth wasn't necessarily something you just saw first. It was something you heard. When I was a little kid, preteen, I was really into like glam rock music. So aesthetics and music went together hand in hand. And as I aged, that was my thing, music with aesthetic. And with goth, I found the music, and the music led to the clothes, and the clothes led to the scene, and the scene led to the clubs, and then the clubs led to your people. Goth wasn't a look you picked. It was a sound that you found, usually when you already felt a little bit outside of yourself. So for me, like, goth was discovering the music and understanding that the aesthetic was something that I was already intrigued by. And then finally, a lot of us, we're young kids when we discover goth, and then we finally get to go out into the world and experience the clubs and meet people. And it's just like this eye-opening and wonderful feeling of connection for especially a lot of us who are interested in things that are subcultural and not in the mainstream, and then to find a whole group of people who feel the same way. It was invigorating. So the aesthetic itself wasn't the identity. It was kind of like the side effect. And if you took music away, the whole thing would collapse. When people say that goth music is not about the music today, my first reaction is honestly just confusion. Not anger, but confusion. Because in my head, goth without the music is like punk without the rebellion, or like rave without the dancing. And then I realized something kind of uncomfortably important. It's not that goth disappeared, it's that the order of discovery has changed. For our generation, it went the music created the scene, and the scene created the style, where for a lot of a younger generation, they find the style to create their identity, and then maybe they'll actually find the music. Eventually. Goth has now become something you recognize visually before you actually hear it. And this did not happen by accident. It was when I started thinking about all of the little goth characters that showed up in sort of the late 90s, early 2000 kid TV shows that I was a little bit too old to watch. Things like Sam from Danny Phantom, Raven from Teen Titans, Gaz from Invader Zim, Emily the Strange. These characters taught kids this is what goth looks like. This is how goth acts. This is the vibe. To me, it feels like the people who wrote these shows were like from a generation that grew up where there was maybe like a goth kid in their high school. And they kind of wanted to zero in on that when they were like making their TV shows about like young kids. They're like, oh, I remember there was a goth kid, so let's just plop that color, plop that tone, plop that idea of identity into our TV shows. But there's really no reference onto why those kids were that way anyway in the first place. It becomes the style is just what they are, when in actuality, it was the music that was making those kids look like that. But we've kind of like chopped that part out of the storyline. Music was not part of the story anymore, because cartoons don't need subcultures. They need very recognizable archetypes. And then I was thinking about how you have like the Monster High and the Bratz dolls. And when that whole thing came into existence, I remember being in like a Target or something, walking around and hearing some girl begging her dad if she could get like a Monster High doll, and him being like, I told you we're not going to get you those type of dolls. So it was all of a sudden these toys existed that were even a little bit daring for like some parents. And goth became something you can buy, something you can wear, and something that you can collect. And when culture becomes a product, the history gets optional. There's no liner notes, there's no record stores, and there's no real goths passing it down in real life. It's just the look. And that brings us to now and some of the things that I am finding myself having the hardest time to wrap myself around. And that is like a lot of like goth influencers. They identify as goth. They've got the black lipstick. They wear a lot of little bats. All their clothes are black. The spooky aesthetic. But there's never any mention of the music ever. And I used to find that really confusing. Like, where did goth enter your life if you didn't have the music? Like, how did this even happen? But then it clicked that they didn't actually just skip the music. They were never introduced to goth through music in the first place. They met it as a visual language through either TV shows or toys or some sort of like visual culture that had nothing to do with sound. Take Wednesday, for example. You can love that show. You can dress like Wednesday. You can feel seen by Wednesday. And then you could wake up and listen to completely non-goth music. And that's because Wednesday is not a music-based entry point. She is a style-based entry point, a personality-based entry point. And that's not necessarily wrong. It's just different. It's totally like people made representations of goth kids, but forgot to include why they became goth in the first place. Music wasn't the background noise, it was the foundation. It was the refuge, it was the recognition, it was the community. So as I try to get my mind wrapped around this concept, obviously a lot of us that grew up with it, the music as a part of it, feel like the whole thing might be lost with a generation that is raised by the vibe first. And hopefully some of them find their way to the music, but some of them just aren't gonna. They're gonna just go for the style. And do we hate on that because of it? I don't know. Is it any less? Is it, yes, totally different? Like, do I have the same things in common with these people that kind of are more about the spook factor and the vibe as opposed to the music? I certainly don't, because for me, the music is everything. But I also feel that there are people out there who embrace both. They're very much a part of the having an immaculate look and being into the music. So maybe I'm just a little more of a casual goth, but the music really is the basis for me. But that doesn't mean that I have to be negative about the way other people might feel. I'm not here to gatekeep, and I'm not here to make anyone feel that they don't belong. I'm just saying that because goth feels more like an aesthetic now is because maybe the doorway has changed. And for some of us, that doorway was everything. And if you discovered goth through the look, that's totally fine. But if you never kind of follow that soundtrack back into the history, there's a whole world waiting for you. So yeah, for my generation, goth was definitely something that you didn't just see and follow. It was something you heard first. So let me know what you think. What generation did you grow up with? And do you kind of see the view of the other one? As an aesthetic goth, can you see why the elder generation so much holds dear the music? And as an elder bat, any of you out there kind of able to like look and understand that maybe there was just a different environment where these kids were attracted to this aesthetic? And can we all come together eventually? That's what I want to know. Again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out my links. I do have my 1999 Revival Goth collection on Etsy of things that just make me feel like 90s goth is back. So if you're interested in seeing some of those items, check that out. And of course, we are a clothing brand, Bones in Black, and I will see you in the next video and on the dance floor.